Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for December 25th of Christmas to December 31st, New Year's Eve. We have an action-packed filled week. Every single day we have a major highlight this week, so let's go ahead and get started with it. This is the last week before the new year, and it's really this week where you're going to see this shift from things being very slow to gradually beginning to move forward, and I think that's really important to know. In terms of just getting ready for the new year, like I genuinely believe that this new year, like if you wanted to do a New Year's resolution, sure, are New Year's resolutions, ever that successful? Not really. But there's just so much forward movement at the beginning of this year that I think this is a good week to kind of get all of that together to get going. But we start Monday off with the moon in Gemini, making an opposition to Mars, and then it will make a square to Neptune, and then an opposition to Mercury. So while the moon is in Gemini, and again, the moon is our emotions, our feelings, we're, conversating, it's Christmas, we're talking to our family members about things like politics and religion that, not a big deal, just lighthearted conversation that I'm sure won't trigger anybody. But I will say with the moon in Gemini opposite Mars in Sagittarius, there's a lot of disagreements at the Christmas dinner table here. But the moon in Gemini is being a lot more expressive, having a lot more curiosity. If the moon's like, again, our emotions and how we're feeling and connection, it's in Gemini. It's about communicating. It's about information. It's about data. But the moon going opposite Mars in Sagittarius is this data, or the way that we're communicating is in opposition with the direction that we're heading, right? Sometimes it's like when you look at a map and you're looking at the trail, but then when you're, when you're looking at the map and you're looking at the trail that you're on, and then you actually look at the, what's in front of you, it doesn't seem to line up. It's like, wait, this says that we're here, but what I'm looking at doesn't necessarily make sense. There's some sort of like, and maybe not misinterpretation, but again, the information, the data that, you're receiving or that you're communicating isn't lining up with the direction that you're going. And I think that's going to be a little bit frustrating. One thing too, to look at this is there's a lot of like emotional aggression here. Like Mars in Sagittarius is like fighting and combativeness when it comes to our beliefs, when it comes to our philosophy, when it comes to our faith. And the moon in Gemini, it's very, like, again, religious disagreements are kind of what's on the menu here for Christmas Day. But as the moon goes opposite Mars, there's this kind of like just frustration. But then as the moon makes a square to Neptune, there's this realization that, you don't know anything. The more that I study everything that I study, because I have Gemini placements, I just love learning. And you guys have heard this saying before, the more that you know, the more you realize you don't know. And that's how I really look at the moon going opposite Mars, is like fighting as if you know, but the moon making a square to Neptune is realizing you don't know the whole truth. I just had this, situation last night because the other day they released, gray wolves into Colorado. I have mixed feelings about it. And so there was a lot of online, combativeness when it comes to like, well, what about ranchers? And then other people, it's good for the wildlife. And so I looked into, the elk population in Yellowstone and how it was at 20,000. And then after they reintroduced wolves, it went to like 4,000, but that was in 2018. And now they're on this upcline, they're in this increase in population. And so there seems to just be like, again, it's one of those things where it's not like oh, this is amazing and great, or this is super bad. It's just kind of dependent on the context. And again, the more that you realize about the situation, the more that, doesn't make sense. Or at least the more that you can sit back and say, maybe I don't know everything about this, which I think is good. When it comes to this day and age, we have access to so much information that it's like, we're really good at repeating information, but are we really good at understanding what that information is? Like in that situation, it's like, okay, do I generally need to form an opinion about wolves being introduced here? No, it has almost no concern to me unless I go hiking and I get attacked by wolves. But more or less, when you kind of research things and you understand things more, it's like, well, I know enough to sit here and say, I don't know the situation. I don't know the answers. And I think that's powerful to do on Monday. Rather than letting yourself get overwhelmed and confused, rather than speaking yourself into a corner, like allow yourself to be uncertain. Because after the moon makes that square to Neptune, the moon will then go opposite Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury's retrograde still. It's moving backwards. We're rethinking, we're reorganizing, and it is in Sagittarius, the sign of belief, the sign of hope, the sign of faith. And Mercury, again, is trying to make things rational, make things make sense. But Jupiter, like Sagittarius, isn't really about that. Like it's more so about faith. It's more so about the bigger picture. And so while Mercury's retrograding here, there is a level of reconfiguring our faith. And I think as the moon makes that square to Neptune, then goes opposite Mercury, there's that inner challenge to like let go of that. But again, I think that's where the power is like, hey, it's okay to change your mind. It's it's really frustrating. I shouldn't say it's really frustrating. I find it not productive to have fixed opinions on things that you like. For example, like I'm an astrologer. This is my realm of, expertise. I do have certain fixed opinions on things that take a lot for me to change, but I am willing to change and open my mind. I've done that a lot, actually. But there's other things where, I think it's good to open your mind. I think it's good to change your mind. But for whatever reason nowadays, we're so fixated. It's like, no, this is my opinion. This is the way that I see it. And I can't see it any other way. And if anyone says anything other than the way that I see it, they're just wrong. And it's like, people have valid points on each side. Like the person that you disagree with the most, regardless of what it is, well, they have a point. You just have to understand what that point is. So Monday's a little bit frustrating in terms of communicating. And I think what's good about it is being open to changing your mind and just being open to say, I don't know. And there's a lot more power in that. But the big highlight that we have on Monday is Venus making a trine to Neptune. So I'm going to disconnect Venus trining Neptune with the rest of the transits because Venus trine Neptune, while Venus is in Scorpio trining Neptune and Pisces, when I was talking about this over on my Patreon, it's like what it's good for is dark sexual fantasies. Blanket statement. Venus and Scorpio, like trine Neptune, maybe, you and your partner are very vanilla and you read 50 Shades of Grey and now you're interested in maybe getting handcuffed kind of a thing. That's really the way that I look at Venus and Scorpio trine Neptune and Pisces. It's not the most appropriate thing, but there is something to say about, again, pleasure and what we want. And that desire is in a sign that has to deal with things that are of a little bit of a taboo, that aren't necessarily on the surface looked at as desirable. And it's trining Neptune. There's some sort of fantasy part of this. There's some sort of romanticization of this. There's some sort of idealism around here. And so what I think is fun about Venus trining Neptune is, again, like, living a sexual fantasy. I'm sure some of you, what is it when you have sex in Christmas, your baby's like a Virgo, I think. And I think Virgo's like the biggest sign. Like there's more Virgos than anything else. So Christmas holiday sex. But you can just take that analogy and apply it anywhere. It's like there's this sort of deep desire of things that you want. Again, maybe that requires, pain over pleasure. Maybe that requires purpose over pleasure. And there's a way to idealize that and romanticize that can lend itself to becoming actualized. And so while I generally don't always like Venus and Scorpio, this, I think, allows some room here. And so, again, maybe you're single, maybe you're just like, fat and you live in your mom's basement and have Cheeto dust all over your belly, and you're not going to get that. Apply that to another area of your life. Again, look at Scorpio, look at, Pisces. And I just think it's one of those things where we're kind of tapping in more into the things that we're, scared of, or the things that, like Scorpio is still like underneath the surface, and Venus is like, again, desire and fun. She's attracted to these things. And with it trining Neptune, we are romanticizing it. And oftentimes our fantasies are much better in our heads than they are in reality. I think that's the only tricky thing here. I learned that if you've ever been to an NFL game, my dad took me to an NFL game when I was like 8 or 9. I was a big Patriots fan, and we went to go see a playoff game with the Patriots versus the Chargers in San Diego. We had the nosebleed seats. I was like 8 years old. People were throwing beer at me because I had a Patriots jersey on, typical, Southern California football fans. And I don't know if you've ever been to an NFL game. Watching football on TV is so much better than going to the game. Going to the game is horrible. It's like, it's just not fun. I'd rather watch it on TV. And so there's one thing, it's like where you might fantasize about something that you think would be really good, but then in reality, it doesn't actually work as well as you might have thought. And that's kind of what the vibe is on Monday. So then we get to Tuesday, and on Tuesday, we have actually quite a bit going on. The moon's going to ingress into Cancer, and then we'll have the full moon in Cancer. Technically, the moon will make a trine to Saturn before the full moon, but then after the full moon, it will just be sextiling Jupiter all day. I love me a full moon in Cancer. And I think the reason why is just it's tapping into more of like what our needs are. Again, Cancer is about protection, defense, nurturing, taking care of things, feeling hydrated is a good way to look at it, feeling safe. And I look at the Capricorn Cancer axis as kind of like, okay, if these are the things that are important to us, nurturing and protecting, there needs to be systems and regulations in order to like somewhat of achieve that. You could also look at Capricorn is old and Cancer is like young and baby-like. And so as we get more things going into Capricorn, because by the beginning of the year, we'll have Mars in Capricorn, Mercury will go into Capricorn, then Venus will go into Capricorn. And as we kind of get more into this, regulated, systematic way of achieving the things that we want, this full moon in Cancer is like, okay, well, if we're going to do all this hard work, why are we doing it? What are our needs? And I just look at the full moon in Cancer as what's nice about this is on Tuesday. I think if there's family drama on Monday, Tuesday is like, hey, it's still nice to see your family. You might hate your family, you might have some negative feelings, whatever. I hope that you guys work through those, but it is nice to be around family. At least that's just my experience. And so this full moon in Cancer is just really looking at what are the needs? Where do you need to be replenished? And again, for some of you, that might be family. For some of you, that might be like the second you get away from your family and you're like, oh, that holidays are over. I don't have to do that for another year and I could just do my own thing. And so the full moon, with everything in Capricorn too, like Capricorn rules bones. And I look at the full moon in Cancer as just kind of like, a sauna or like a deep tissue massage of like, let's relax these things. We're so, hardcore, like stressed, like where can we relax a little bit? Where can we release the tension a little bit? And as the moon makes that trine to Saturn, again, Saturn and Pisces, what's confusing, reality is not really, clear, but where we have to be disciplined and mature changes and is variable. This full, like the moon making that trine to Saturn is like, okay, this is now an area where I need to change. This is now an area where I need to be more like that long road of being more mature and disciplined in ways that are mutable is allowing us this room to, like, again, express what we need to be taken care of, what we need to protect. And then the moon sextiles Jupiter. It's like, hey, this is a part of the long process. Jupiter and Taurus, it's basically motionless right now. You're not seeing maybe the results that you want, but you know that if you keep doing these continuous things, you will get the results later on. But the other highlight that we have on Tuesday is Mercury is making a square to Neptune. Here's the thing. You just don't know what you don't know. And I think one of the things with Mercury, we had Mercury squaring Neptune on the last full moon in Gemini. That's what I think is really interesting is we had the full moon in Gemini, Mercury squared Neptune, where Mercury was in shadow, Mercury was direct, where it's like, hey, I'm moving forward with these ideas, but now that the moon's full, I'm not really sure what's going on. Now that the full moon's in Cancer and Mercury's retrograde in Neptune, this is maybe revisiting what was confusing at that time, maybe revisiting what wasn't communicated clearly. And so I look at Mercury being retrograde in Sagittarius as, again, it's like one of those things of like trying to prove God exists. Like that's very Mercury in Sagittarius. It's very like, I want to rationalize the things that are greater. I want to rationalize and try to bring some logic into things that revolve around faith, that revolve around a bigger picture, that revolve around an ideal. And I just think as Mercury is retrograde, you're maybe realizing that, it's a balance, right? At some point you can put some logic and rationale to it, but at other points you just have to believe and you have to trust. And I look at Mercury scoring Neptune as, you might get data, you might, ask these right questions where there's a lot of uncertainty. I just think the big thing with Mercury retrograde scoring Neptune is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things just not being clear. And while that can be stressful, if you're looking for that clarity, what it's good for is just relinquishing that. Like the reality is you don't always have to know. You don't always have to know what's going to happen in the future. You don't always have to know what the best solution is. Sometimes sitting in that confusion, sitting in that uncertainty is the powerful thing to do. And so I look at Mercury scoring Neptune as like, hey, you may not know what the future looks like. You may not know how to plan for it. But with this full moon in Cancer, what can you take care of right now? Can you have a good meal? Can you clean your house? Can you relax a little bit? If that makes sense. Like rather than trying to force yourself to think of these solutions and, know what the plan is, like, let's just take care of certain things right now and let your mind not focus on that. That's how I look at Tuesday being, good. So then we get to Wednesday, and on Wednesday, the moon, while it's in Cancer, will just be sextiling Uranus. It applies like all day long. The moon in Cancer just sextiling Uranus is, again, just trying new things. I feel like every time the moon's in Cancer and it makes that sextile Uranus, I always end up trying a new moon in Cancer thing. Like I was washing my clothes with baking soda for a long time, and I don't know if you could see this. I don't know what it is with these shirts, but I keep getting these like it's like dust marks. I don't know what it is, and so I tried washing it with vinegar, and I'm still getting these weird dust marks. I don't know what it is. I'm still trying to figure that out. And so I tried washing with vinegar. I tried doing very cancerous things, which is like taking care of things, cleaning things, feeling nurtured, feeling protected, and being somewhat innovative about it. With Uranus and Taurus, so many people are focusing on like, whether you're going vegan or whether you're going carnivore or whether you're, trying to get chemicals and products out of your life, things being more natural. Like Uranus is that innovation around that stuff. I think that just the food area is so interesting right now with Uranus. It's like there's the keto stuff, there's the lab grown meat stuff. That's really Uranus and Taurus. I mean, there's also things like Bitcoin and alternative currencies. But the moon in Cancer is kind of like, can we tap into that in order to do the Cancer stuff, which is again, like you need to have clean clothes. You need to, have a clean house, that sort of thing. But on Wednesday, the two highlights we have is the sun making a trine to Jupiter. I love the sun trining Jupiter. Here's the reason why. Jupiter stations direct and retrograde each time the sun makes a trine to it. It's the same thing with Saturn. It's both Saturn and Jupiter. When the sun makes a trine to it, it's about to station retrograde or direct. And so with the sun in Capricorn, right, our willpower, our energy, our vitality is focused on like rigid regulation and systematic order and, again, tradition and making plans. And I think that's a really good thing for the new year to do. And as that sun trines Jupiter, there's tapping into that power of like, hey, if I go by these, this X, Y, and Z plan, if I stick to this regimen, like I will see the results that I want. And Jupiter's still motionless at this moment, but I think the sun trining Jupiter is tapping into Jupiter stationing direct, which happens at the very end of the week. And so I just look at the sun trining Jupiter as, hey, I know what it's going to take. I know that it will be a long road. I know what it is that I want, and I'm okay taking my time with it and being patient with it. I just have to stick to the system. So I love the sun trine Jupiter. I think it's very positive. I think it's also earthy too, right? Like the earth is going to make us feel grounded. It's going to make us feel stable. The sun's in Capricorn. It's trining Jupiter. It's like, hey, I'm doing this thing, and I know that it's going to work out for me in the end. The only issue on Wednesday is Mercury will be retrograde still, and it will be conjoining Mars. This, I'm kind of going back and forth with it. Like on the surface, it's yelling. It's essentially just yelling. Like I would almost, and this isn't even, I can't even really say this. I'd say like, Wednesday is going to be a bad day for like online arguments, but every day is a bad day for online arguments. It's all just yapping. But Mercury retrograde on top of Mars is yapping. And especially in Sagittarius. One way I look at it is, again, just speaking out the side of your neck, saying things you may not mean, or maybe even saying things that you're not even sure of, but you're just saying them anyway to be combative. I don't like that, right? We don't want to do that. We want to be honest with the way that we talk. We want to be clear on the way that we talk. What I think Mercury retrograde on top of Mars is good for is really configuring like, hey, let's say you are you're on a road trip, and a while ago you made you did the timeline. It's like, okay, it's a 12-hour destination there. If I travel, you do the stupid fourth grade math. If I travel 80 miles an hour the whole time, I'm gonna get here at this time. That's the thing. But then as you go along, you stop for the bathroom, you stop for food, and you try to hurry up. And I think like Mercury retrograde on top of Mars is like trying to compensate with like speed for like bad planning, being like, oh, well, I didn't plan this well, so let's just go fast. And, that might work, but you might get pulled over. And there's certain parts of the country where if you get pulled over, it's a lot worse than in other parts of the country. And I like the way I look at it is compensating for bad planning with speed. And that may not be the trick to do. Same thing. It's like when you're tired, like and you're driving, it's like at a certain point, like there's been times where I've driven, and I'm like, all right, it's only 2 more hours. I can do it even though I'm tired. And there's other times where I'm like, dude, I'm fucking exhausted. Like I'm not driving anymore. I didn't plan on getting a hotel, but I'm just going to get a hotel because it just is what it is. But the other part I look at it for is making adjustments to the plans for unforeseen circumstances, for lack of, again, planning. Like Mercury and Sagittarius is, I've joked a lot about with Sagittarius. It's like we don't plan, like when we go for a hike, it's just like, we're going to go for a hike. We're just going to walk in the woods and, figure it out as we go along. Mercury retrograde on top of Mars is being like, okay, like maybe we didn't plan accordingly. Maybe we didn't do things. And it doesn't matter how fast or how much we push through. We have to make some changes here. So I think what it's really good for too is in terms of like if you're making this plan for the new year and you have these New Year's resolutions, kind of coming back to the drawing board again, being a lot more clear of like, where are you going? Because that's another thing we're going to talk about on Thursday is the question of why are we here and where are we going is a really big part of it. And I think the Mercury retrograde conjoining Mars is the realization of like, you're like, oh, this isn't working. So let me just go fast, go fast, go fast. Let me just, do the same thing even harder and more aggressive. And I don't know if that's really the solution. So then we get to Thursday. And on Thursday, the moon will be in Cancer. It will make a trine to Neptune. It will then make a trine to Venus. And then it'll ingress into Leo. So the moon trining Neptune is, again, romanticizing, idealizing, fantasy illusion. That's all fun. And then the moon makes a trine to Venus in Scorpio. Again, I think that kind of taps like more into the Venus trine Neptune stuff. There's some sort of like, what is it after like, in the whole BDSM world, it's like aftercare or whatever. It's like when you do something crazy like that, and then it's like you have to like cuddle or snuggle for like an hour or something like that. It's like the aftercare. I know these are inappropriate analogies, but this is just what's coming to the top of my head. That moon in, trining Neptune, trining Venus is, I think, just like trying to comfort this area. Like, okay, moon in Cancer, feeling comfortable, looking at least to feel more comfortable trining Neptune. What does that look like? How can we romanticize that? And then the moon will make that trine to Venus where it's like, again, how can we make this a safe space? How can we, again, I just look at it as like aftercare of like doing very intense Venus and Scorpio things. But then the moon ingresses into Leo. The moon ingressing into Leo, I really like this because, again, we get all this fire stuff going on. There's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of ambition that gets sparked here. And the moon in Leo is very proud. The moon in Leo is very confident. And so there's a lot of confidence that kind of moves into Thursday evening. But then on Thursday, the next highlight we get is Mars squaring Neptune. Like I said, there's a highlight every single day this week. And Mars squaring Neptune, the way I talked about this on Patreon was it's one of two things. If you are doing the same thing over and over again, like let's say, this is an analogy. I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, this is you, but it's like, let's say you're just working your job, getting things done, sometimes you just have to work every day and that's just what it is. Mars and Sag squaring Neptune is just kind of like throwing your hands up and being like, where the fuck am I going? Why am I doing this? Why am I on this path? Like, why am I here? If you are making great changes in your life, if you are trying to pursue a new path, if you've already been introduced into a new path that you are on, the Mars in Sag squaring Neptune is lacking that confidence and being confused. I'm like, am I on the right path? I mean, I think that's going to be true for both situations here, but there's just a questioning of like, am I on the right path? Am I on the right journey? Am I aiming for the target I need to aim for? And feeling overwhelmed and confused by it. Maybe, with Mars and Sag squaring Neptune, you are, if you're not like I'm a Sag rising, like half of my personality is maps. When I drive, I know where I'm going. Like I rarely ever need like Google Maps or anything like that. But if you're not keen into that, Mars and Sag squaring Neptune, you might be on the road and being like, where am I going? Is this the right direction? Am I really moving forward in the right place? And there's one way to look at it is, hey, like if you're in that situation where you're just doing the same thing, you haven't made any changes, and you get really frustrated with your path, that's powerful. Why are you doing the same thing every day? Are you making any of the change? Like, why are you on the path that you're on? Are you going to get to the destination that you want to be at or not? I think that's a powerful realization. However, if you are making positive changes in your life, if you are in the direction that you, at least on the surface, know that you should be in, and you're questioning that, that's going to be also powerful to tune in and be like, hey, you are going to question this path. It's nothing is linear. Everything is cyclical. You're going to have times where, let's say you're making changes in your life. You're starting a new business. You're starting a new workout routine, whatever it is. You're going to get to like, there's going to be highs where you're like, I'm killing it. This is great. I'm going to be here in a couple months. It's going to be so great. And then there's other times where you're going to be like, why am I doing this? Am I even going to get the results? There's a lot of doubt. And if you're in that space where you're moving into a new direction, you're on this path and that doubt comes up, like, just battle the doubt. Like, you just have to keep going sometimes. And you will have times of doubt, and you shouldn't make decisions based off of it. And so I look at Mars square Neptune as, again, just being like, where am I going? What am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I in this vehicle moving forward? And am I getting to the direction that I want to be in? Or am I on the path that I want to be on, but I'm just doubting myself? I think you guys know what the answer is on both of those situations. If you're questioning where you're at and where you're going because you don't know where you're at, where you're going, maybe it's time to be a little bit more clear about it. And if you're just doubting yourself, well, you might just need to sit in that and keep going anyway. That's the powerful stuff to do, is like, one of my favorite sayings is no fear and do it anyway. No fear is KNOW. No fear and do it anyway. Yeah, you're going to be fearful. Yeah, you're going to be doubtful, but keep going because you can push yourself. It's not that hard. You can do it. You have to have the mental fortitude to do that. And there's going to be times where you question what you're doing, but this is just one of those times, but you should keep moving forward anyway. Then we get to Friday. On Friday, the moon will be in Leo, making a square to Jupiter. Again, the hard part here is, the moon in Leo wants to be very proud, loud, very glitz and glamour. The moon in Leo reminds me of like a lot of accessories. Like there's like women that like accessorize, like they wear like 5 or 6 necklaces, earrings, sunglasses, clip in their hair. That's like moon in Leo. It just reminds me of like accessorizing. But the moon making a square to Jupiter, while Jupiter's in the superior position, is saying like, hey, you might want this glitz and glam, but is that going to be the direction that you really want to go in? It's like, for example, you can buy a shitty, cheap watch for $30. I mean, you can buy it for $5, really. But is that really valuable? Sure. It's like one of those things where, you see like it's not even really rappers that do it, but like fake jewelry. Like, sure, your watch has Swarovski crystals, but they're not diamonds. Come on. Are you really going to spend the $200 on some cheap watch just to be able to show off? Or do you want actual silver, gold, diamonds, an automatic watch that actually provides some value? And I think the question on Friday is the optics around it more important than the value of it? And again, Jupiter's getting ready to station direct here. The value of it's going to be really important. And I think the better thing to do is like hold off your temperament, get something that's more valuable that isn't just so flashy, and the optics of it might look good. Like, it might look cool from a distance that you have this cheap watch that is definitely fake, but at the end of the day, it's a fake watch. At the end of the day, it's not real. At the end of the day, it's just shiny. I would really recommend going for value more than optics on Friday. And on Friday, we also have Venus ingressing into Sagittarius. This is another highlight that we have. Like I said, there's a highlight every damn day. I love Venus in Sagittarius because I think the thing is, Venus in Scorpio struggles with having fun versus Venus in Sag is just letting loose. Venus in Sag is wild, if you know what I mean. Venus is about fun, love, romance. She's in Sagittarius, which is a sign of adventure, exploration. It's very animalistic. It's bicorporeal. And again, Venus is in the sign of, like, again, Jupiter, which is about spirituality, faith, hope. And I just think Venus and Sag is just go along with it. Have fun. Like, be wild, be adventurous. And what I really think the powerful thing is here is Venus is in the sign of Jupiter and Jupiter is in the sign of Venus. Now, this is what we would call mutual reception, which means it's like wife swap. They are in each other's houses. Now, technically, in order for things to be in mutual reception, they have to be like aspecting one another, and they're not here. But this is one of those things where it reminds me of, like, have you ever had like a friend, like you thought about a friend where you're like, oh, like, this person I haven't heard about in a long time just pops up in your head. And then maybe a week or two later you call them and they're like, I was just thinking about you the other day. It's like, you don't actually have to have that contact to know, like, to be on that same wavelength. That's how I look at Venus and Sag and Jupiter and Taurus. Is we're starting to connect the dots here of, like, Jupiter and Taurus is like, we're expanding value, right? Jupiter is like, hey, what are my beliefs about value? What are my beliefs about wealth? What are my beliefs about security and stability? What's really worthwhile? And Venus is in Sag saying, like, hey, Venus is about worth and pleasure and fun and really, again, like, value. And she's in Sagittarius. I value, like the bigger stuff. I value, again, it's just one of those things where you're connecting the dots, saying like, with the moon and Leo making that square to Jupiter, being like, the glitz and glamour, maybe that would be, nicer, but I really value this instead. And I think Venus and Sagittarius is like connecting the dots of like, if I express value through faith, if I express value through optimism and hope, it's like, if you are, I get a lot of shit on my videos of like, you're so negative all the time. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I believe that's genuinely what people want to pick out from me, because I'm realistic. I will tell you when things are bad, but I've been doing this for 7 years. All of my shit's personal development oriented. I will tell you that things are good, but you have to make them good. You are not going to get that shit handed to you on a silver platter. And the thing is, you have to have the attitude of it. If you are in a mindset that, everything's going to be bad and everything's, not going to go my way, and that's got to be subconscious, because consciously you may not even be thinking that, but subconsciously deep down you think things are going to go bad. When you tap into that, when you are exposed to content like this, you're only seeing the bad because that's what your subconscious is locked into. But if you rewrite that, which takes, typically like transformative effort, it takes conscious awareness and like changes over time. But if you can lock onto like a mindset of, hey, everything is going to go my way, but actually believe it. And you sure, for example, I have people that watch my videos that like, I say like, hey, here's the reality. Things are going to be stressful and bad. They go, okay, cool. I'm glad to know that, this area might be a little bit stressful, but that's fine. Then other people hear that and they go, why are you so negative? Why are like things, I got like, it's like people are like Jupiter, every astrologer says Jupiter and Gemini is going to be great, but you're saying it's in detriment. It's like, people get so scared of that word detriment. It's like, sometimes, gifts are really excellent. Sometimes when someone gives you something, it's like maybe you had a Christmas and one time your mom and dad actually listened to you and you got what you wanted. And then other times they just got you socks. And it's nice to get socks. Like we all want, as I get older, like I literally got wool socks for Christmas and I'm fucking so stoked because I want wool socks. But you get to a point where it's like, okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but I'm still grateful for it anyway. It's still awesome that I received something. Like that's Jupiter and Gemini. Like it's not like, okay, it's not the most, you're not winning, for example, you're not winning the $10 million lottery, but maybe you won $2,000. Hey, that's something. That's cool, right? Sure, $10 million would have been amazing and great, but you still got something. Like that's Jupiter and detriment. It's like, hey, you're going to receive something. It's not going to be like Jupiter. It's a skinny Christmas. Good old Saint Nick ain't got the funds to give you everything that you want, but you're going to get something. And again, the reason I'm ranting on this is with Venus and Sagittarius and Jupiter and Taurus is like, you've got to have that mindset. And like, a lot of you are really good about working on that, but a lot of you aren't. I just see it in the comments. I see it in my consultations. Like you guys have to absolutely work on those subconscious beliefs. Like not astrology isn't just saying, again, there's 10,000 astrologers that could sit here and say, you're going to meet your twin flame and everything's going to be good and great. But then when you look back at your life, you go like, so many people are like, well, this happened to me and I was traumatized this way and I was a victim of this. And it's like, okay, well, what is the balance here? Like, is the astrology showing everything great, but you have all these bad things happen? It's like, you're going to have like not good things happening to you in your life. That's fucking life. But it's your mindset, it's your beliefs that are going to dictate how you react to that, how you respond to that, what stories you make up about it. And that's up to you. And so when we have Venus and Sag and we have Jupiter and Taurus, these are both of the benefic planets. These are both good planets and they're in each other's good signs. There's like mental connections happening here saying like, okay, I can have fun with this. I can see value in this. I understand that believing and just going with the flow and having that faith. And, for example, like Venus and Sagittarius is almost like, it reminds me of storytelling. Like Sagittarius is about storytelling. It's about myth. And Venus and Sag is like, you're like, oh, well, that myth isn't real. Or you can just have fun with it. Like that's a fun story. It can make you more creative. It can make you think of a different way. And I think that's the thing with Venus and Sag and Jupiter and Taurus is like, let's have fun. Let's express ourselves a little bit differently. Let's just go with it. Everything's in Sag. Like, for example, let's say, you're questioning your path. Like I said before with Mars squaring Neptune, you're like, am I on the right path? Even though you're doing all these right things, you're making all these changes, you're questioning it. It's like Venus and Sag is like, well, you're going to doubt it, but at least have fun with it for right now. Just have fun with it. Like it doesn't need to be serious all the time, but if you have fun with it, it's going to make it a lot easier to keep going and getting rid of that doubt will make it a lot easier. So then we get to Saturday, and the moon, while it's in Leo, will make a square to Uranus. So there's a disruption here. Again, not everything goes according to plan. The moon in Leo making that square to Uranus. The moon in Leo making that square to Uranus and Taurus reminds me, if you buy that cheap stuff just for the sake of buying cheap stuff, it like instantly breaks. And you're like, oh yeah, no shit, it's not real. The moon squaring Uranus will be a little bit of a disruption. Moon, though, will trine Mercury and it will trine Mars. And that's where I think the powerful stuff is. Like the moon in Leo is like, let's get some confidence going. This is a waning moon, right? We're at that phase where things are slowly going down. I think after the full moon, the moon is technically like hot and dry, hot and bothered. But the moon in Leo, feeling confident, feeling glamorous, maybe is a way to look at it. Trining Mercury and trining Mars now with Venus there is like, have fun. You know what I mean? For example, let's say you did buy the cheap broken watch or whatever, and maybe it doesn't work, but whatever, it looks fucking cool. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where the moon in Leo making a trine to Mercury is all you really need to do is have the right attitude. To be honest, a lot of you need to work on the attitude. And I know, and the thing is, yeah, I think people like when they watch my content, they get like kind of butthurt when I say stuff like that. Like I say all of this out of love. Like I don't like the reason I'm harsh is I want you guys to do better. I want you guys to actually be enjoying your lives, getting the results that you want. And the way that I do that and what I think works really well is sometimes giving you guys harsh truth. And a lot of the time, like a lot of you guys can have bad attitudes. Not every one of you. I've talked to so many clients. Some of you have better attitudes than me about it. And it inspires me to be like, I need to change my shit. But a lot of you also don't always work on that attitude. And, sometimes you guys have been living your whole lives doing the same thing over and over again. You've installed these beliefs that are so calcified that it takes a while to decondition that. But I think with the moon in Leo, trining Mercury, trining Mars, if you have the right attitude of confidence and just being like, rather than, being like, oh, nothing's going to work. And, this is just, all you have to say is like, you know what? I'm the shit. I can do this. You've done other things in your life before that have changed drastically. You can do it again, but you just got to muster up the confidence. And confidence is just like stacking up undeniable results. Like, hey, you've done X, Y, and Z before. What you guys should do is go back in your past and be like, when did I absolutely just crush a challenge? When did I absolutely just like get on top of my shit? When did I have something that was so unsurmountable that I just did so well in? Stack that. That's going to build that confidence. And if you really can't do that, fake it till you make it. Genuinely. Saturday is when Jupiter stations direct. Now, the thing is with Jupiter station direct is we like Jupiter station direct. Things will begin to move forward. Only issue is Jupiter's still basically motionless at this time. So while it is in the moving forward part, it's still really slow. Okay. And I feel like all of Jupiter and Taurus is slow. Like we have to take our time. We have to nourish the things. But what I like about Jupiter and Taurus is if Jupiter is about faith, hope, belief, it begins to move forward on Saturday. There's this confidence that is going to come over you. And it's Jupiter. It's not like again, the moon in Leo trining Mercury and Mars is very like on the surface level confidence. Jupiter and Taurus is like, for example, you can have a lot of confidence because of like the stuff you have gathered. Like, let's say, for example, you're some sort of like a prepper. If you've got 6 months worth of food and you've got medical, you've got bullets, you've got gold and silver, there's a level of like confidence that you have. You're like, well, I've got the security, like I'm good. You know what I mean? Same thing with like if you have a good investment portfolio, if you've got property and land, there's a level of confidence, there's a level of belief and hoping like that can, that you could tap into because you just have the stuff. And that's just Jupiter and Taurus is like a lot of that hope and belief is going to come from physical goods. A lot of that is going to come from, again, security and stability. That's just the question is, what does security and stability look like for you? Specifically, what house Taurus rules for you? So Jupiter stations direct. I just think Saturday is a very big positive movement forward. We get to Sunday, and on Sunday, the moon will ingress into Virgo. It will square Venus, and then it will go opposite Saturn, but then it will trine Jupiter. So there's a little bit of like a, counting my coins and, going through everything and organization. And the moon in Virgo squaring Venus and Sag there are good times for Virgo, but I think with everything in Sag right now, it's just like, okay, if you are so worried about each little specific thing where it's like, maybe it's like, well, I've got 6 months of food, but I need 7. And how do I get everything to get 7? And it's like, okay, that's not really what the priority is here. The moon making a square to Venus is like, don't let the nitpicky stuff, for example, let's say dancing, for example. I've made this analogy before. If you are afraid of what people are going to think of you when you're dancing, you're doing it all wrong. Like dancing is supposed to be relinquishing that fear and expressing yourself and having fun and looking dumb anyway. Like we're all, I would say the category, and this is funny, the category of white people that could dance really, really well is very small. For most white people, we look dumb, but just have fun. It's okay to be dumb and goofy and silly. Like that's the whole point of Sagittarius. And I think it's like, when I was at weddings all the time, guys are really bad about this too. They're like, I don't want to look like they're in the club doing this. They're like, I don't want to dance. It's gay. It looks dumb. It's like, dude, you're like, what a buzzkill. Like go and have fun. Go and dance. Like maybe if you dance a little bit more, you wouldn't look so dumb doing it because you would actually be a little bit good at it. So I look at the moon in Virgo making that square to Venus and Sagittarius. Like you can't overthink it. Right? Like have fun, just express yourself. You can't be too nitpicky of like, oh, like, well, I can't lift my arms up if I'm dancing because I don't want the sweat in my pits to show. Like you're a human being, like you're going to sweat. Then the moon will go opposite Saturn after it squares Venus. And this is one of those things where, again, Saturn in Pisces is like questioning reality. What do we need to be doing? There's this back and forth of like, where do we need to be more mature and responsible? And the moon in Virgo opposite Saturn is like, it doesn't matter how much you plan, you prep, you organize. Those answers still aren't clear. You can only do what you do. My bad. You can only do what you can do. So I just think if the moon in Virgo opposite Saturn and Pisces is like knowing when to stop because you don't know what else, to move forward with. Like, let's say, well, again, it's like you only know what you know and do what you can do. But like once you hit that threshold of like, I'm not really sure what moving forward looks like from here, you don't need to continue moving forward. But then the moon will make that trine to Jupiter where it's like, okay, well, I've got enough to make myself feel comfortable and I could see how this planning and this preparation is going to lead me forward in the direction that I want to be. And that's Sunday. Sunday has no highlight. That's it. Next week, we have the new year. We're starting 2024 off. Get this week, get your shit together. We want to have a good year. This is not a bad time to just get your shit together to move forward. Next week, we have Venus making a square to Saturn. That's, it's not the worst thing ever, but it is a little bit of like a don't have too much fun. Mercury stations direct next week. So again, we get that clarity. And then Mars goes into Capricorn. It is workhorse time. Like Mars, with everything moving into Capricorn, January and a lot of February is just hustle, grind, get shit done. So that being said, make sure you guys leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Like this video. It does help the channel out. And with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next week.